You're listening to
They're gonna call it a hard foul. They're gonna call it a hard foul.
Choke job at the Garden last night. A choke job at the Garden. We are hot foul. Brought to you by the what?
And First Sports Network, bitch.
Yes, and a very somber morning as the Celtics go down 0-1, lose home court advantage to the New York Knicks in a game that should have never been close. Never mind, become a loss. Uh, Go ahead, wherever you want to go with this. Um, from the breakdown to what look forward to or whatever.
That's my opening thoughts on that Celtics game.
Ah!
What's the matter?
It was a puke.
Oh,
Yeah.
um, yeah. I My opening thoughts on that Celtics game are what's going on with Kristaps Porzingis. Um, Jaylen Brown lacks explosiveness, and that's concerning. And it took away from the Celtics' biggest advantage, driving to the hoop against Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. It didn't look like last night that Jaylen Brown had the explosiveness to blow by them. Um, and that hurt the Celtics on offense. And it also looked like Jaylen Brown didn't have the strength on the post to stay with Karl Anthony Towns like he did in the regular season. So those are my concerns. The way the Celtics played, yeah, Jim, it was just horrible. My last opening thought is to take one shot in the paint in the third quarter, and only I think it was 3 or 4 shots in the paint for the rest of the game after that against that Knicks team. Um, Unacceptable. And for the majority of the third quarter, they were getting good looks from three. But after that, when the Knicks made their run, it was no longer getting good looks from three. It was just really bad offense, really bad shot selection, and a team that was all out of sorts.
Yeah, so I kind of look at this as two different things. So I had through three quarters and then the fourth in overtime. I thought through three quarters, the Celtics had pretty good offense, or really good offense at times where they were moving the ball, getting wide open looks, just missing them. They missed layups. They shot under 60% at the rim, which is kind of an insane number. They were driving and kicking. There were times where they had multiple opportunities on offense where there would be offensive rebounds for open threes, which are the best type of threes, and they would miss those badly too. And they took, I think, 25, not just open threes, wide open threes last night, and only hit seven. That's just a disastrous number. 7 for 25. It's not something you typically ever see. And I thought the difference between this game and games in the past, like last year in the playoffs, is you're right, they kind of settled in that fourth quarter. And I thought the key sequence was at the beginning of the fourth, where, they went into Al hits that three with about 5 seconds to go in the third. They're up nine, and they miss a layup. They missed three threes or two threes, I forget, Mike. You can correct me, that are wide open off offensive rebounds again. Good shots in that opening possession. That opening possession was really good, actually. And they didn't make them. Knicks come down, they hit a couple threes. All of a sudden, this is a one possession game. And I felt like the Celtics just began to panic offensively after that. And to your point, really settled. Now, they did have some good possessions where Tatum and Brown would drive. There's one in particular where Tatum drove past a Holiday in the Duncan spot, and White got a wide open three in the fourth. There were a few of those possessions, and there were other possessions where they would miss open threes, but they felt like um, rushed. Tatum at times would get Anthony or Robinson in a switch, and he wouldn't attack them at all. He would just, pull up and make it easy, I felt like, to defend him. And on a night where his shot really wasn't going, I just didn't understand why he wouldn't at times force that issue, drive. And I understand, like, they were taking away his driving lanes, and I think I texted this to you. They would send two or three guys at him at times when he's driving. Trust your teammates. I know they're missing shots at that point, but it's better offense, and it's going to be more in rhythm, and you're going to have a better chance of making shots, and you'll get some layups out of that. Um, because even though they were missing a ton early in the game, they still scored 30 plus points. I think 35 points in the second quarter, missing all those shots. They scored 26 in the first, and even in the third, where it got kind of messy. I think they still had 23 or 25. If they just continue to play, and even if they were missing, they were going to score 20 by accident, right? In that fourth quarter, at least. They would just score 20 by accident because they would get to the line, they would get easy shots, and then they would have won the game. Even though it would have been closer than what we would have liked, but they would have won the game. Instead, they just settled and they scored 16 points, and it was really bad offense. And then it carried over into the overtime. I put a lot of this on Tatum. We certainly praise him as much or more than any other pod probably out there, but this one was not one of his finest moments. I thought he settled way too often. I don't think he looked to really get the screen and roll going. Um, I know he's more comfortable doing that with Porzingis or Cornette, and obviously you're out there with Al in the fourth quarter, but he's played with him a ton, so that's not an issue. The Holiday Tatum role has always worked pretty well, even using White in those situations. Um, you could have got creative and put Tatum as a screener, which the Celtics have done a ton during the regular season, and use him in the short role. They did none of that. They weren't even looking out seeking bridges against Tatum,
They
like
weren't
they
doing
did
anything,
during the
Jim.
regular season. So it
It
was
was, yeah,
really ugly
yeah.
offense in the fourth quarter, and it cost them.
They were hanging out around the perimeter in launching threes, and they shot 60 of them. That's way too many. Way too many.
When you miss
And
them. Yeah.
it's still way too many for a playoff game because threes don't go in as often in the playoffs. And in the fourth quarter, they weren't. There were very few that were good looks
Well, that's why I say
because
I divide it between the
there
two.
were a lot. I
Yeah,
mean, you talk about the end of that game. It was Tatum dribbling,
I
stepping
agree.
back and shooting threes, not driving to the hoop, and the coach didn't help him.
No, the coach had especially the end of game.
I mean, you go the last 17 seconds without getting a shot off. That is puking all over yourself. Pathetic performance by the Celtics last night. The Knicks missed 14 free throws and you lost at home.
Yeah, the Knicks weren't very good offensively. They really weren't. They had one good quarter in the third, but outside of that, the Celtics held them to 20 under 25 every quarter, and they still lost the game. They're
Yeah, it
like
was bad.
just, and they only lost by three. But hey, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. Like I think I texted you this too, Mike. If the Celtics had held on to one, we could say all this stuff today, but it almost doesn't matter. You're up 1-0, and that's all that counts, right? In the playoffs,
Yeah.
they're down 0-1, and that's all that counts. They lost home court advantage. That's all that counts. So now they have to win on Wednesday and go from there.
Yeah, and I'd love to see where this team is health wise moving forward because I think that's a big concern. What's going on with Christoph Porzingis? Because he's clearly not right, and is he going to be missing a lot of time? Um,
Yeah, I don't know. They say an illness. It's who knows?
Very vague.
Yeah.
There was no updates on that prior to the game, so I don't know what's going on there. And Reggie Miller alluded to it last night. Jaylen Brown had no explosiveness, no rise on his jump shot. Um, I saw it too last night. He couldn't. I mean, this Jaylen Brown couldn't blow past Carl Anthony Towns. He couldn't blow past Jalen Brunson in those matchups.
No,
He
but
had to
he
he had to
he
shoot over the top of them.
but he settled too. Like in the third quarter, in the second quarter, especially in the second quarter, he was just seeking his matchup against Brunson or whatever smaller guy was out there, getting to the paint and just shooting over them. And I think he had 13 points. So I know like he's not the same guy, but against this team, Mike, I think the concerns are valid going forward. Against this team, it shouldn't be close. I watched last night, and the Knicks shouldn't beat them in any games. They just shouldn't. Like this is a major mismatch on the court, on paper. That's why last night was so disastrous because you've given a team life
They,
that just should not beat you.
yeah, they might now. Um, I, I'm interested to see the rest of this series to see if we'll get a consistent effort from the Celtics, or if we're going to go back to 2 years ago where they allow teams to get back in the series and drag these things out, and it eventually comes back to bite them.
Well,
We'll see. I mean,
this is a team that doesn't
you,
really
you allowed
Yeah.
Josh Hart to dictate a lot of that game last night just by effort, because you couldn't end possessions with rebounding. That was something we talked about yesterday or the day prior on the pod too. What do the Knicks have to do to win? It's almost like they did everything except the efficiency on offense. The Celtics would have two bigs on the floor and they still couldn't clean up the rebounding. It was Jason Tatum rebounding by himself. There's a lot they got to clean up. They got to, offensively, they got to drive to the hoop more. They just got to put their head down and drive past these guys, because then you'll have better looks from three.
I thought they did that for 3/4, Mike. I thought their offense was fine for 3/4. I thought they were just missing. Like I really thought they were getting paint touches. They were missing at the rim. They were missing jump shots. But and I think if they continue to do that, even with the misses, they would have won. And they went away from who they were, and they settled, like you said. I think you kind of summed it up perfectly. If they played offensive the same way through the first 3/4, they would have won the game. Because this Knicks defense is so bad. Like you're just gonna score by accident. Like the Celtics offense was not humming in the first half, and they scored 3 points?
They didn't play good in the first half.
No, and they scored 63 points, right? Because
Yeah.
this Knicks defense just gives everything up.
They also got to
that's what's so frustrating, right? That's just what's so frustrating.
Yeah,
And
they didn't. I didn't think they looked good for 4 quarters. I thought they got a lot of calls in the first half that were soft. I thought the way the game was called in the first half, it was like a funeral at the Garden, as far as the energy and life in the building, because of all the fouls that were called. And yes, they were fouls, but this is playoff basketball, and some of them were really soft fouls. And so I think that benefited the Celtics quite a bit. And in the second half, when they started calling the game a little bit differently, the Celtics just stopped driving to the hoop. And I know they got, good looks, especially at the beginning of that third quarter when they built that lead. And they were still getting good looks for part of that Knicks run. But yeah, they just fell apart. They just fell apart, and they didn't post anybody up. They didn't try to post up Tatum during that run. They didn't try to get him any looks in the paint. I thought he waited too long too to get his shot off. He sat on 13 points until about, I want to say, like, the Knicks cut it to 7. Then he hit 2 or 3 straight threes to get that lead back up to 13. Yeah, it was just a disaster. And I want to see on Wednesday night just this team be more aggressive and more focused, and not blow a 20-point lead to this Knicks team, because you're right, they shouldn't be losing to this Knicks team. That was really disappointing last night.
Yeah, just don't stop playing. The Knicks hit you with a punch because they started making some shots. The Knicks in transition, you missed shots. They came out and got running and made some really. They give them credit. They made their open looks during that third quarter stretch, and it's like you took a punch and then you never punched back. You just stopped playing. You got tight. There was a lot of Tatum at the top of the key, like looking for the center matchup and then not attacking it. Jaylen Brown was, virtual no-show as well late in that game. So it was very frustrating. The Porzingis thing, I don't know what it means. Hopefully he's back. They could use him, but they should beat this team regardless. I will say, I know you're worried about a couple seasons ago. I don't know. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt in terms of this team barely loses 2 games in a row over the last 2 years. They haven't lost 3 games in a row since the Miami Heat series. So I do expect a really good effort. I expect them to win going away in game 2. But, now you put yourself in a spot going to New York, even if you win game 2, that if the New York gets 1, it's 2-2 and a best of 3, and anything can happen. That's the position you put yourself in with losing last night.
Yeah, Jim, I'm just putting some gas in my car.
All right.
So this might be a good spot for an ad, maybe.
All right, Mike. So what do you think adjustments going forward for these two teams? I think obviously the Celtics need to make shots. if they're open, and especially layups that they missed. But
Yeah.
beyond that,
Celtics need to play.
what
Yeah,
are you thinking?
play with playoff intensity. The Celtics play with playoff intensity, and be focused. Drive to the hoop. Be ready to shoot when you get the ball, and you'll be good. And clean up on the rebounding. And their coach needs to be more focused. They can't go the last 17 seconds of a game without getting a shot off, because for 11 seconds, when it was obvious that they weren't going to run a play, he just sat there and didn't do anything. Um, and lastly, the fans. Last night was like a funeral. Where's the crowd in Boston? Because it's not going to sound like that in New York.
Well, so on the fan thing, I saw reporters on TNT's on that were at the game saying the place was really into it and loud. If you remember last year on TNT, Mike, it was the same thing. And then when you would have a game on the ABC or ESPN, you would hear the crowd. So
Well,
it's
let's see.
something.
Let's
It's
see when the
something with the
game's in New York.
telecast. What's that?
Yeah, let's see when the game's in New York on
But that's
TNT
on
and see if.
the. So all the games in New York are on ESPN.
Oh,
Yeah. So like it's not
Mike
that.
Bean.
Yeah. So you will hear it on ESPN. I think it's the TNT telecast. I actually, based on what reporters were saying, the crowd was good.
Oh,
Um, as far as they do something with their microphones. I don't know what they do, but it was the same issue last year. As far as adjustments, I think number one, you brought up the rebounding. You got to clean up the defensive glass, especially if Porzingis isn't in there. That means five guys rebounding, boxing out, doing everything you need to do to get that defensive rebound. And obviously, Al, that's not the best part of his game anymore. So your forwards and guards really everyone needs to be involved in that. Um, and then the second major thing for me is when you get these matchups that you want, the Tatum versus center, Brown versus center, don't settle. Attack it. If it's one-on-one, you're gonna be able to get to the rim and probably draw a foul. And if it's not, you're gonna be able to find a wide open man. They settled last night, consistently in that fourth quarter and overtime, and it really hurt them. It just felt like the game was played completely on the perimeter, as you mentioned, and you can't do that. And you know what? It's the playoffs. You you'll probably get up big against the Knicks on Wednesday night, and they'll probably at some point make a run because it's the playoffs and it's going to happen. If you're up 20, they'll eventually get it down to 11 or 9, and that's okay. That happens. How do you respond? Are you going to punch back, or are you going to kind of get really tight like you did and settle for, knockout shots instead of good shots? So those are my two big adjustments. Um, Mike, you want to touch on the injuries?
I'd love to get an update. So we still don't. They didn't give any updates last night on KP about what's going on. I mean, how'd they get away
Briefly,
with that?
briefly, Missoula after the game saying, and I actually believe this, that, he just kind of found out in the moment and didn't really deal with it, and I get that he has a game to coach. And he said thought there was a chance he could play. But beyond that, they didn't say what the illness was. And obviously, he had that viral thing where he missed a lot of games. So, and it looked obvious to me. He was not right. Like, it wasn't even what you saw versus Orlando. He wasn't getting out of his screen in that second quarter. He just, like, he wasn't even getting out of his screen. So something was wrong. I'm somewhat relieved it's not like knee or ankle, but at the same time, I don't know.
He shouldn't have been out there at all. That's why I'd like the reporters to press a little bit here and find out what the hell's going on with this guy. What is this viral infection? Uh, It's
The Celtics by law can't really say. Like it's one thing to like talk about an elbow or a knee, to report on, but if someone has something going on inside their body like that, like KP doesn't have to say, and if he doesn't want the Celtics to say, they can't.
so it's going to be one of those things where it's like day to day, every game. Like I don't know, it's concerning to me. Um,
I don't
we'll
know.
have
I
to
don't know
we'll
what
have
it
to wait and
was.
see what's going
Yeah,
on there. And
I don't know.
to get yeah, I don't know how far they can go if Jaylen Brown isn't Jaylen Brown and KP isn't playing. Um, this might not be the year for them if that's going to be the case, Jim. It's going to be really hard to make it out the East uh, with Jason. And then you have Sam Hauser. I don't know if there were any updates on Hauser last night.
He had a bad limp walking out, so I wouldn't expect to see him.
For a while.
Yeah, but again, you don't need him in this series, so hopefully you get through this and you can be okay. The only thing else, I agree. So if it's Brown isn't himself and KP is out, it's going to be really hard to win. If only one of those things are true, I think it will still be really hard to win, especially if it's a Jason Tatum you saw last night. But if it's a Jason Tatum we've seen for the majority of the season and then in Orlando, you got a shot.
Yeah, well, other guys got to show. It's not just Jason Tatum. I mean, if the Knicks are putting three guys on Tatum, Al Horford, Derek White, Drew Holiday, these guys got to cut to the basket, get open, hit open shots. It just becomes really tough and really taxing, and it hurts on both ends.
Hmm.
Last year, a healthy Jaylen Brown, he's not shooting over the top of these guys, even though he had a good third quarter. He's just blowing by him and getting to the basket.
Oh, I know. I know.
And, I'm talking like this is the guy who just took over Dallas, and took over Indiana, and like they're in a tough spot. Um, it's less about last night and how they played because I don't think they're gonna shoot like this. They're gonna shoot better for the most part. If they lose again in New York, it's probably because they have a bad shooting game, and that's why it goes six. Um, but I just the longevity of this thing. Um, I don't know how they survive without both these guys. Brown will be out there, but him not being himself, they really need KP in my opinion. But we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm not going
Um,
to rule KP out. I mean, it could have nothing to do with the viral infection. Maybe he had a stomach issue that we don't know about, and he's back Wednesday night. We don't know. So, not going to
another
rule.
adjust,
Go ahead.
yeah, another adjustment the Celtics need to make with their bigs, like they can go double big against New York because the New York Wings don't really beat you off the
Oh,
dribble.
sure, sure they can. They
Um,
did a lot in the first half.
yeah, that's something I might look at with KP out, playing Cornette and Al together, because then that gives Tatum more options when he is triple teamed, as far as like he doesn't just have to look for guys
Hmm.
shooting threes. Hopefully, Luke Cornette doesn't get rejected by the rim.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then
He played pretty well otherwise. So,
if KP is back and he's out there, and Josh Hart's grabbing you and following you, and the refs aren't going to call it, you need to just fucking throw him on the ground.
yeah,
Yeah, and see if you can get away with it too. Because enough's enough. I mean, Orlando did the same thing. They're not calling that for KP this year. I don't know why. So at this point, like we need him to get those post touches. We need him to get those easy looks inside. Like maybe you get called for the foul and you make a statement and the rest start calling it. I don't know, but you got to do something to defend yourself and get yourself some looks down there. Josh Hart shouldn't be having the freedom to grab and pull at you that you can't even extend yourself to go after a Tatum pass. And that's not KP's fault. That's the ref's fault for not calling it. But at some point, like an adjustment for me would be like somebody knock Josh Hart on his ass. When he crashes for a rebound, knock him over. If you get called for the foul, oh well. Like we need to this guy's fucking killing us.
so
He
the
had a
one part.
great game. Josh Hart was great last night. I know the box score won't say it, but he was great.
Yeah, he was great on the glass. He's afraid to shoot, and the Celtics, and I think that's really hurting the Knicks offense. He's afraid
He
to
had a
shoot
big
the
three in
ball.
the third quarter, though.
He had one big three, but there was often times where the Celtics they're not guarding him at all.
No, they're not.
They're not even guarding him, and he's afraid to shoot. There was one time he had the ball at the foul line, and there was no one around him, and he turned it over trying to pass it to Karl Anthony Towns. It's like he's afraid to shoot it. But he made some really big plays. The Knicks need that out of him. The guy for the Celtics, you mentioned it last night too. Holiday was great all night long. I thought
He
his
was.
defense on Brunson was really good. I know
How about
Brunson,
his defense on Towns?
yeah, his defense on Towns. Um, Brunson had that spurt in the fourth quarter, but after that spurt, he really didn't do anything. And that had a lot to do with Drew Holiday. Uh, So hey, I you mentioned earlier, what are we going to see? You worried about 2 years ago. I think you're going to get a championship response from these guys.
There you go.
I think we're going to get a blowout in game two.
Woo!
Um, that's my prediction. I think you're going to see something between 12 to 25 points, somewhere in that range of a victory, and it's not really going to be that close.
I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, Jim. And then instead of the Thunder and Nuggets, can I ask you 2 questions about the Knicks, and that's how we'll end the pod?
Sure, go for it.
All right, this is what's going to happen. The Celtics are going to play dog shit and pull out the win. And then all the talk is going to be about how New York's got a chance to win this series. You know when the blowout's going to happen?
What?
Game three. Game three in New York. All the Knicks fans are going to be excited. They're going to have all this belief. I was reading things on X last night from Knicks fans. This is the best game of my life. Okay? So, yes, the Celtics are going to play like dog shit on Wednesday. They're going to find out a way to make it 1-1. And everybody's going to be picking New York going into game three. And the Celtics are going to win by like 35. That's what's going to happen.
I could see it. Yeah, I like, and going to New York and Madison Square Garden doesn't. I don't think that really is a huge deterrent for the Celtics team. So
No, I don't think so.
yeah.
So, speaking of the Knicks, my 2 questions for you. The first one: how sustainable is it to play Miles Bridges, 50 minutes in a game? Do you think that's going to impact these legs of the New York Knicks as the series goes forward here?
No, not with him. I mean, he hasn't missed a game since high school. So like I wouldn't be concerned about him if I was a Knicks fan. It's the playoffs. That's what you have to do to win. And that's what you got to do to win against a better team. So good for him. He really showed out, especially late. The guy you always have to be worried about for an injury is Brunson. And I don't know if that has to do with minutes or not, but that's the history here. So, but no. And is it sustainable? It has to be.
Okay. And my second question for you: are the Knicks better when Karl Anthony Towns gets in foul trouble and goes to the bench? Because personally, I think they are.
Again, no, I don't think so. Look, they were better
They were
with
last
him.
night.
Yeah, in the fourth quarter, they were better with him on the floor.
Yeah.
He puts an extra layer of pressure on the Celtics defense, especially with Brunson out there. Even when they set screens, when they did kind of go the pick and pop, it opens up the floor for Brunson quite a bit with Cat out there because your big has to extend all the way out on him, or whoever's covering him has to extend all the way out. So, look, Mitchell Robinson helps their defense, but I don't think he helped it that much last night. I thought the Celtics were still getting whatever they wanted when he was on the floor. So I don't know. Yeah, they need him out there. The Karl Anthony Towns' problem is he cannot cover without foul. And that's what made what happened in the fourth quarter so maddening last night even more, is they didn't attack him at all. And when they did, they settled.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. Especially Tatum. That was
Mhm.
one of the worst Tatum performances I've seen in a long time. So,
Yeah.
all right, Jim. Wednesday night, game 2 in Boston. Every home team has lost so far here in the second round of the playoffs. So we'll be ready to go, and it's a must win. It's a must win. It's the first Celtics must win in 2 years. So
Yeah, it's interesting since the Miami Heat series. Yeah, and that's the last time they lost two in a row in the playoffs. And they have barely lost two in a row even in the regular season since then. So they got to come out ready. I expect them to. I expect everyone to be better, including the coach. And they better because you don't want to go down 0-2. Then things really are in jeopardy. So, all right.
all right.
Talk to everyone soon.